I'm Chris Erdmann, and this is Made of More, the show where we go beyond business to uncover real stories that shape entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW, we explore the pivotal moments, the adversity faced, the risks taken, and the resilience found along the way. This isn't just about what people have built, it's about who they've become. If you're ready for inspiration, practical insights, and stories that remind you that you too are made of more, you're in the right place. Welcome to the show Made of More. I'm your host, Chris Erdmann, and today we have a special guest, one of Seattle area's favorite attorneys, or the Pacific Northwest favorite attorneys, Justin Park with Romeo Park. He's a partner there. Did I say that name right?
Romero Park.
Romero Park, thank you. He's a very trusted attorney in real estate, construction, and business law. Justin has argued before the Washington Supreme Court, guided countless of homeowners and businesses through complex disputes, and built a reputation for practical, real-world solutions that bring people a peace of mind. But beyond the courtroom, he's a devoted husband, a father of four, a community leader in and outside of his church, and someone whose life reflects service, integrity, and strength under pressure. Did I get that there, Justin?
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that. Very complimentary.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for taking your time today and being on the show Made of More. I know you're busy. You have countless clients, but we're going to take this time and just talk about kind of your journey. How's that sound?
That sounds great. Thank you.
All right. And you can hear me pretty good?
Just fine.
Oh, perfect. So take us back. Where'd you grow up and what shaped your early years to become the man who you are today?
So before the age of 10, my family bounced around a little bit, mainly between the Yakima Valley in Washington, where I was born in Yakima, and various other spots, Oregon, Utah, even Idaho a little bit. And then when I was 10, we moved to a little town in central Utah called Nephi. Nephi nowadays it's exploded to 3,000 people. And anyway, from age 10 on up until I left for college, that's where I was at.
Oh, wow. So you had a really intimate upbringing. You knew your community and they knew you pretty well, would you say?
That's very true. Small town life is all about knowing everybody, pretty much everybody who's around you. And I look back on that actually really fondly.
That's great. You know, I grew up in a pretty small town up towards the Canadian border called Lyndon, Washington. And forever, the population seemed to be around like 9 to 10,000 people, which I thought was really small because it's like, I felt like I knew almost everybody growing up and everybody kind of knew a little bit about everybody's business. And it was a pretty neat upbringing having that type of a close community. But 3,000, that's
Yeah, and it didn't get to 3 until just the last few years. So it's a small town and a nice place to live, and I was fortunate.
Oh, good for you. I love that. So in doing a little bit of research, it sounds like that your family had an electrical contracting business, and maybe within that you observed, and no pun intended, but maybe that sparked your calling.
I think that's accurate. So yeah, my dad was an electrician and actually a utility lineman for most of his career, and then finally started his own business in, when would that have been? Oh, probably 1991, 92 maybe. But before that, he had been doing little side jobs as well. I mean, the first time that I remember going and being his assistant on a weekend or an evening to, wire a house or do something for a little extra work, trying to bring in a little extra money, I was probably 11 or 12. And so I'd been working with Dad ever since then. And then when he started his own contracting firm, myself and my two brothers were both working with him right from the get-go. Although interestingly enough, I was already in college by then, and he had made it very, very clear to me anyway, and I think to my siblings, that his expectation was that we would not follow him into the family business so much as we would use it as an opportunity to to move forward. I remember one time my dad saying to me that as you imagine when you're working in the trades, as you start to get older, the body starts to break down and things become more and more difficult. And he said, you need to find something you can do where you can sit in a chair and use your mind, because you won't always be able to, do the hard lifting that you need to do. And so he pushed me to go to school. While working for him as an electrical contractor, I wired over 100 houses, and we did a bunch of light industrial and commercial work as well. And I helped with doing bids and everything like that. And I was involved in the bid processing on even some government work, and saw a job that I was involved with the bidding on it go pretty bad, and ended up in a bunch of litigation, and ended up really kneecapping my father's business. And I watched him go through that and dealing with lawyers and everything like that. And I had thought about the law as a career before, but once I saw that, I kind of saw an opportunity. I thought, you know what? I know this construction business. I'd like to be able to help folks dealing with things like my dad, right? And do more than just sit on the sideline and watch it go down. So that was a very important piece for me in deciding to go to law school. It wasn't the only piece, but it was a significant one.
Yeah, sounds like a passion was sparked there, and whatever happened with your dad's business. Do you want to share a little bit more about that? What happened there?
Yeah, well, that was kind of the beginning of the end for that business. Part of it was that Dad was getting older, and it was time to stop swinging hammers and pulling wire for a living, and so he phased that business out over the next few years, and did various things from then on. So, but it really shaped me because, one, I learned a trade, right? Which, I've used that so many times since then. I've used it to help friends and neighbors and family. I've used it for myself. The home we live in now, when we did a full-scale remodel on a big portion of it. And while I didn't do all the electrical, there was a certain portion of it that I said, you know what, I want to do more here. I'm going to do it myself. And so I was able to do that. Yeah. And so that's been a huge benefit to me in my life. It taught me how to work hard, taught me how to meet a deadline. It taught me how to deal with clients, right? That was one of the things I had to do was, meet with homeowners and go over the plan and figure out what we were going to do and what they wanted. And I learned so much from that work.
Oh, that's great. And it sounds like the way that you talk about your father sounds like he was a thoughtful man and sounds like he was a good teacher, which is, if he was, it's no surprise, because the way when you show up in the business world, you like to explain what you do, and it's like you do teach your clients along the way, which is wonderful. So would that be correct that your dad was a good teacher?
There were good days and bad days. Yeah. Safe to say. Right, relationships with dads are always a mixed bag, right? Aren't they? But yes, as far as teaching those skills and helping me understand what I needed to do, I learned that from him. And more than anything else, he's still the hardest worker I've ever been around. He could just work hard, and the one thing that he did teach me was, with regard to work, is to focus. And that is that, it's like, okay, we need to get something done. Let's get it done. Let's not be distracted and go to the left or to the right. Let's stay right here. Let's get this job done, and then we can move on to the next thing. He was always preaching that, and that was really great.
That's a great skill. Thank you for sharing that. From what I understand, you spent a little bit of time in Japan. You want to share what that was about?
So I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, commonly known as the Mormons. I grew up in Utah. When I was 19, I was called to serve as a missionary in the Japan Sapporo mission, which consists of the North Island of Japan, Hokkaido, the way up north there,
Mm-hmm.
And so I spent 2 years there as a missionary, and it was an amazing experience. It really, really eye-opening. You know how it is when you first leave home
Mm-hmm.
and you're first kind of on your own and you have control of your own life. There's a lot of ways that can go. And so my first experience was being this missionary. And so I think one of the good things about it was that it wasn't like I was just suddenly thrown to the wolves
Right.
and saying, hey, you have complete control over your entire life.
Mm-hmm.
I had control over a whole lot of my life, but there was also some structure that was involved.
Sure. You were surrounded by mentors and the church, it sounds like.
Exactly. And our daily schedule, the framework of it was set out for us, right? We had to
Mm-hmm.
fill in the detail, but the basic framework, you're going to get up at this time, this is what you're going to do here, you're going to go, and the basics of it were set out. And then we were given some freedom to find things that were valuable to fill the rest, some of that time with.
Mm-hmm.
So having that bit of structure and that bit of oversight made it so that, the transition from living at home with mom and dad watching over you to being a full-fledged adult, I think it was a nice way to dip my toe into the water.
Yeah, kind of,
You know,
you had freedom, but it was guided, and you
yeah,
had people to reach out to if you needed to turn to somebody.
very much so. And so that part was great. The other part was, going to a country that I'd never been to before. I didn't speak the language before I went. And so I spent a lot of time, studying the language, learning how to
Mm-hmm.
speak. And then, the whole point of being there and being a missionary is to talk to people,
Mm-hmm.
right? And to share with them and learn about them and let them learn about you. And, you know, that's a really, really important skill in
There.
life, is to be able to walk up to somebody you don't know, introduce yourself, and start a conversation, right? And it was something that, frankly, I was very, very bad at when I was younger. By nature, I'm kind of an introverted person. I know people sometimes get surprised when I say that
Mm-hmm.
because I try to come across as a pretty gregarious and open guy,
Yeah, you
but
do.
that's because I've worked at it,
Yeah.
right? It's not something that came natural to me. So being a missionary really helped me with that, because that was my job every day. Go out, meet new people, talk to them, you know, and show them what you're all about. So
Mm-hmm.
just an amazing experience, met so many wonderful people. Obviously had an outstanding experience in Japan. The country, really great people, great country,
Did you
and
learn the
learned
language
that,
a bit? Did
yeah,
you?
yeah, by the time that I left, I could sit down and have a conversation with just about anybody on, well, fairly limited number of topics, but I could get by,
Yeah.
right? I don't have the vocabulary I once had. I do still enjoy, I still can, get by. I watched Shogun last year,
Okay.
and it was delightful because I had just enough ability to understand the language that, that I would laugh at something and my wife would go, "Why did you think that was funny?" And I was like, "Well, the translation there was a little, left a little to be desired." But, so that part has been great. Learning a language is a lifelong effort.
It is. It
And
is.
yeah,
I just traveled to Japan not too long ago and I
yeah,
spent a very short time there. And but I really appreciate the culture. It's so much different than our culture, and it was seemed very. They were really responsible for themselves, is what I gather. Where they didn't have trash cans at the time I
right.
went, and but there's no garbage anywhere, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
And they just seem like a real thoughtful country. And it seems like, I'm being an introvert myself. When I first met you, I thought this guy's an anomaly because he's an attorney and he's like this big extrovert. But the more that I've listened to you, watched you, spent a little bit of time with you, you start to notice like what a deep thinker you are. And not that extroverts can't be deep thinkers, because I think that they can be very much so. But to the tune is like you really dive in on a subject and you could do it fairly quickly, I've noticed, and just you could go an inch wide, but a mile deep is what it appears to me. And I think to me that seems like a trait of somebody that's not ADHD, but somebody that's an introvert. And so that
I think that's accurate. I think there's a couple of factors that have led me that way. Interestingly enough, so if you take a look at that, this is my left ear.
Yeah.
I have a condition that's called microtia. It's a birth defect.
Sure.
So I don't have a left ear, really. My skull is solid there. There's no ear canal. There's
oh, really?
So I can't really hear anything on my left side. So that put me in a position early on that I had to position myself whenever I was in a social situation. And it also gave me, unfortunately, this is the thing I had to overcome, was it gave me an out. Because I could position myself to the right and then just not hear anything. Or I can position myself to the left and I can be able to pay attention. And so that kind of, I think, is what started what you just described, right? Is that because I had that limitation, I had to focus on where I was and what I was doing enough to be able to participate. And so that kind of pushed me to be able to do what you're just talking about.
Now, I don't know much about this condition. Is this something you're born with or something that...
Yeah, it's a developmental condition. It's called microtia. It happens from time to time. You'll see people with it. And it's a birth defect, so it's nothing that was, caused by anything. It wasn't an accident or anything like that. And it's just the way that I happened to develop, before I was born. So
yeah.
So I don't know anything different is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
Right.
Can we talk about this just a little
Please.
bit?
Yeah.
A lot of people that we run into, like when they have something that happens to them, whether it's from birth or sometime in life, there could be a why in the road. And that why could be, this is why I'm not doing well. This is why I choose to look at things from more of maybe a victim mentality, or essentially kind of a crutch or a weakness that I subconsciously or consciously lean on, which will bring me one way, or that why in the road can be not that you don't experience those weaknesses or those times of adversity, but you start to lean the other way and go the other path in the road and be like,
yeah,
I'm going to make this a strength. I'm going to overcome this. And we got 1 minute left and we're going to dive into this after the break, but can you tell me, it seems that you chose a path of strength. Has it always been like that?
I think it's interesting that you say choose, because I don't consciously remember choosing. For me, like I said, it wasn't something where it happened when I was 10 years old, right? Mm-hmm. This is literally the way I've been since the day I was born. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was this is just the way that the world experienced. Now, it was not until I was probably in my 30s, late 30s, that I started processing the idea that, hey, I'm processing the world differently than folks around me. I didn't even consciously realize it. And I just had the way that I did things. Now, it helped, I think, that I wasn't an only child and I wasn't a first child. So when I had an older sister, and she's a really active person, does all sorts of neat things, right? And so I just wanted to be that.
Okay. Well,
right?
I love that. And let's remember that.
Okay.
Right now, we're going to take a quick break. So stay in here with us. Listen to the messages. I'm Chris Erdmann, the host of the show Made of More, sitting here with Justin Park, Northwest Premier Attorney. Stay in here and listen back after these few messages.
The more you listen to your kids, the closer you'll be. So we asked kids, what do you want your parents to hear?
I feel sometimes that I'm not listened to. I would just want you to listen to me more often and evaluate situations with me and lead me towards success.
We're not adults, so just be there and listen. I just want someone to yap to. And I just feel like I'll be fine if someone just hears me talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and talk.
You're doing a really good job. And I don't think I tell you that enough. And I know sometimes we get into it and it's just hard on both of us. But try to understand me more and I'll try to do the same.
Listening is a form of love. Find resources to help you support your kids and their emotional well-being at soundedouttogether.org. That's soundedouttogether.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and Pivotal.
Are you ready to discover remarkable stories of resilience and cultural connection? This is Diaspora, a show sharing the journeys of first-generation immigrants from the Indian subcontinent now building their lives in North America. Inspiring, insightful, and always engaging, Diaspora offers a unique perspective on the immigrant experience. Join me, Aditya Mehta, my guests, on the Diaspora Show every Wednesday at 2 p.m. right here on KKNW.
No other station delivers this much variety. Alternative Talk 1150.
Welcome back to the show Made of More. I'm your host, Chris Erdmann, and I'm speaking here with Justin Park, the attorney that you need to know, whether it's real estate, business, or all things around this. But Justin and I were just talking about this condition that he was born with, and that, in my perspective, he chose the path of strength, but he says that he never chose either way. This is the world that he just knew. So can you keep diving back into that?
Sure. So I think right before the break, I said that I had an older sister who was an active person, and she still is to this day. Mm-hmm. Far more an impressive a person than myself, I would have to say. But so that was what I wanted to do, right? I wanted to be active. I wanted to do things. You know, I had family, I had friends, I had things going on, and I just wanted to do stuff, right? And so I did. And I didn't let the fact that I didn't realize that the fact that maybe I'm only hearing what's happening over here. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that had a big impact on me. I mean, I played sports. I did Boy Scouts. I went camping. You name it, I pretty much did it. And, I did well in school and everything like that. I think a great deal of credit on that is due to my parents, who I didn't realize it at the time, but I know that when I first started going to school, they made sure to get there ahead of me and talk with the teacher and say, hey, let's make sure he's sitting over here, so that he can hear what you have to say. And so he doesn't, tune you out, and things along that nature. So I think they did a few things that, like I said, I didn't really see them. They were kind of behind the scenes to help that happen. But I just wanted to be able to do the things that I wanted to do, and I didn't realize that I necessarily had a limitation.
Yeah, that's
maybe they didn't treat me like I had one. That's probably good too. They didn't treat me like I had a limitation.
Yeah, wow, what an important message. Like, I'm listening to this, like thinking as, I'm a parent, and I think my daughter says I was a really good dad, still does today. She's 30. And but I listen to stories like this, and you're describing, like, you didn't really know at the time, but behind the scenes, you had probably the best and strongest advocate you could possibly have in this world. It's your parent, but they never treated you like you had any condition. And I actually don't look at you like you do. When you're talking about this, I'm like, oh, I don't even know if I noticed you here. I've noticed something, but it was never important, It was never a feature for me that stood out, because you're much more than.
Right.
And so, but what a great lesson, a little nugget for any parents that are out there. It's like, hopefully, that your child doesn't have any conditions, but the things that you could do to kind of set them up and behind the scenes so they don't feel like they're getting special treatment, just scouting out the classroom and just checking out what it is before you get there. And, those are things that I didn't necessarily think of as a parent, but I could look back and be like, wow, if I thought about that, what a wonderful thing you had.
Yeah, again, like I said, I don't think I started to realize it until I got a little older and obviously had kids of my own and, going through things, and finally started to realize that this has had an impact on my life. It just hasn't been, again, I haven't had a way to notice because I don't have anything else, any other frame of reference to put it in. But that's the whole thought process, is realizing that, hey, I have, the things that I see and experience aren't exactly the same as the things you see and experience, or the things someone else sees and experiences. And we all, and a matter of fact, I just want to talk about this because I think we all have something.
because we're
Yes.
human beings. You could be too tall, you could be too short, you could be too big, you could be too small. You could have bad taste over here and great taste over. The list just keeps going on, and all these things could be looked at as maybe not, like you said, it wasn't a strength or a weakness. It just was, and to me, that is the biggest strength, because you didn't acknowledge anything as a strength or weakness. It was just, I'm just going to go for it.
Yeah, and I just dealt with it. So
I love it. I love it. I could talk about this all day with you, but you're made of so much more. And so I'm just going to keep dialing in here. Tell me, you went into Supreme Court. You battled, what was it, the Ninth Circuit and Supreme Court? Like, what is this? This sounds like a big deal.
Well, so my law practice, I am first and foremost, I'm a litigator. Mm-hmm. That is what I've done. Now I do a lot of transactional work too, but
you want to tell people in your version what a litigator is for those that don't know?
Good point. Yes. So a litigator is somebody who tries cases, for lack of a better term. That's the short version of it, right? That means that I file lawsuits, I defend lawsuits, I go to court and argue motions, mm-hmm. I write briefs, I negotiate settlements, I do everything that goes along with having civil lawsuits be involved. So I don't do any criminal law. Mm-hmm. I don't do bankruptcy. I don't do divorces. I do civil litigation, which means things to do with businesses, things to do with personal property, things to do with real estate, and that sort of stuff. And so in doing that, I've been fortunate enough to have cases where I got to argue at the Washington State Supreme Court, which was really a highlight for me. And I even won that case, which was really even better.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about it at all, what that case was? Or?
Well, that one was an interesting case because it had to do with a doctrine called the independent duty doctrine. And so it's a tough case because, that win and lose is a difficult thing to quantify sometimes in lawsuits because, we think of when the judge decides in your favor. Well, great, but there's consequences that come from those decisions mm-hmm. that go forward. So this was just one little piece of a much, much larger case. And while we won this one piece, I think in the end, the case didn't go the way that my client would have hoped it went. But for this piece, we were able to successfully make that argument. And the argument was that, at least prior in the law, if you have a contract with somebody, mm-hmm. The contract controls what obligations everybody has. And that's usually the case. But there are occasions when a party can have a duty, a responsibility with regard to another party that is independent of the contract. Mm-hmm. And so if that exists, then you can have a lawsuit over whether or not that person met that duty. Even though they have a contract that spells everything out over here, there might be something independent that comes outside. The most common way you used to see this anyway, is in construction cases where people would want to bring claims of negligence against their contractor for failing to do work that was up to a standard. Mm-hmm. And the old argument was that, well, no, we have a contract here, and the contract governs those things. And because that loss that you've suffered is economic in nature, we're not going to let you bring a separate negligence claim. Well, then the law changed. Mm-hmm. And my case was part of that change. And now we have what's called the independent duty doctrine. And that's where the court goes in and says, well, before we decide that we are or aren't going to let this claim go, we're going to decide, is there a duty that exists outside the contract that was breached in this particular instance? And so if that's the case, then that case might be allowed to move on. So I got to go up and argue that in Olympia in front of the state Supreme Court. I've gotten to argue in front of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is one step short of the U.S. Supreme Court on multiple occasions. Wow. I've been in front of the Washington State Court of Appeals, I don't know how many times, a lot, over my career. And then, of course, I've appeared in the superior courts of King, Pierce, Snohomish County, and then probably about half the counties in the state over my career.
Wow, so it sounds impressive to me. So it sounds like a lot of work too.
Well, that much is true.
Yeah. Well, I've just got to say, like, I've referred you out and, say I would do it again. That's the message. The message is good. So, and what about this? What sums up your mission as a lawyer?
Yeah. In 2006, I sat with my business partner. There was two of them at the time, and we sat we had a little retreat. We went to Las Vegas, and we sat in a conference room there in Las Vegas, and our goal was, all right, we need to figure out our vision, right? What are we? Who are we as a firm? What do we want to accomplish? Mm-hmm. And because we kind of felt like we needed to do this, right? A mission statement, if you will, right? And that mission statement that we came up in 2006, we have not changed it to today because it's really held true. And that is to maximize financial reward and personal satisfaction by helping people resolve their challenges in a caring, creative, and cost-sensitive way. And that was it. That's word for word. It's written. It's on the wall in our offices, mm-hmm. right? We recite it in our staff meetings, things like that. It's an important part of what we do. And so when you say, give me a sentence, that's the one that immediately pops to mind, right? Yeah. Because we worked hard on that thing, trying to make sure that it encapsulated everything. Because initially, as we were talking about it, well, we want to help people. Yeah, we want to help people. And then I was like, wait a minute, that's a little over the top, because we're helping people, yes, but we're billing them for it. And sure. It's a career. And to be perfectly honest, if I wasn't getting paid for doing it, I probably wouldn't do it, right? I'd go do something else. Right. But that's the best part about the job, right? Is that I get paid for helping people. And that's what it really makes it go.
Well, that's a very logical and also a great mission statement, because it makes sense for both sides. You're clearly taking your expertise and you're doing the best you can for your clients, doing well, helping them. At the same time, in return, paying yourself back, and maybe both sides, so you could keep doing it again.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, mission statements are really hard to come up with. So the fact that you guys came up with it and you stuck with it for this long, I think that's a testament, because for anybody that's tried to put a mission statement together, they usually keep changing.
Absolutely. Right. And we've looked at it several times over the years. Every few years we take a look at it and go, should we change this? And we always come back to, I think we got this part right.
Yeah. Well, you did get it right. And I think that's why you keep getting referrals.
I would like to think that has a great deal to do with it. I get people who ask me, well, how many cases have you won? How many cases have you lost? And I have no idea. And I think the reason for that is because I always do tell people, I said, look, if you ever run into a lawyer who says he's never lost a case, mm-hmm. you need to turn around and run away. Don't just walk, run. Because that usually means that lawyer curates his caseload very carefully, right? He only takes winners. Yeah. Right? Because if you just help everybody who comes to you, you're going to get people who are in bad situations, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But they need help. Right? They need help to be put to try to get through that bad situation and get to somewhere where they can move forward from it, right? And so I often take on cases where I look at it and say, hey, look, I can't sit here and tell you that you're going to win your case.
Yeah, but a win's not all. Sometimes, like you were just saying, sometimes it's hard to decipher win or loss. Sometimes you're there for the best outcome for your client, and maybe the best outcome was probably maybe 50% of what they were actually going for, but it's 110% better than where they could have ended up.
Or at least to get them to an end of a dispute.
Yeah, get them to the end of a dispute, on with their life.
In the middle of it, right? Mm-hmm. And it's taking up time and resources and money and all these things. And sometimes you look at it and the best we can do is find a way to end it so that you can move on, right? And so, that's the caring, creative, and cost-sensitive part, right? Is where we try to say, okay, what's your problem? What tools do we have to get you somewhere? Mm-hmm. And where is that going to get you? And let's put together a plan and then execute it. And then that plan is going to change because there's going to be other people who are going to interact with us. Mm-hmm. And they're going to have their own efforts. And so they're going to do things that require us to, change direction and do things like that. But as you can tell, that's the part that gets my juices flowing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
That's why I'm excited to send people your way, because you do get excited about it. And, sometimes it makes me nervous when a lawyer there is not excited about anything, because then I'm like curious, are they still enjoying their career, or are they going to come in here with good energy? But, I don't ever question that with you. And it sounds like that, people that we mutually know that have used you have the same sentiment, is that they, not only are you a wealth of knowledge, but you're excited to jump in there when, in times that nobody is excited at being there at all.
Very few people come to me when things are going well.
Yeah. Oh my God. So, if they're not in an area where you serve, like, how do you identify a good a good attorney?
That's a great question, right? So I have my own thoughts on it, I guess, and I'm sure there's lots of people with lots of different ideas on it, but I think that finding an attorney is based on at least two things. One is obviously making sure somebody has the necessary skills and knowledge to be able to address your problem. Of course, that's the case, right? The other part is determining what relationship you as a client need with that attorney, right? So, if a CEO of a Fortune 500 company comes along, right, because they have to consider shareholders and outside forces and all these other things, they might have to go and hire a Preston, Gates and Ellis from downtown Seattle, or go to New York and hire a big firm simply to check a box so they can show, hey, look, we got the best and the brightest. Right? But that's because of the things that are driving them, the forces that are driving them, right? I've had the chance to work for a few clients that are bigger companies like that. And usually when they come to a firm like us, they're coming to us with a smaller piece, right? So we've worked for Eddie Bauer and Xerox and Morgan Stanley and Kodak and few companies like that over the year. But it's always here's the piece that we're going to give to you, and you're going to handle that piece, and because you have a particular expertise or you've been involved with a case or something like that. But for an individual looking, the relationship with the attorney is as important as the subject matter. Mm-hmm. And so that's where I think our firm does a pretty good job, and we're quite competitive like that. So when people there's a few things that I do that I think are important for clients, and maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but they work for me. And that is, one, we return phone calls and emails, right? We try.
It's a big deal these days.
We try to do it within 24 hours, and sometimes less than that, right? We're not always successful in doing it within 24 hours, but I think we're pretty darn close. And I'm constantly surprised by how big a difference that alone makes. Mm-hmm. The second thing is that when I have an initial consult with a client, I don't charge them for it. So when somebody calls me on the phone and says, hey, I want to talk about whether or not you're the right lawyer for me, that I don't bill for that. One, it would cost me more time and money to actually go through the billing process for something along those lines. So there's that piece, right? The convenience piece. But the other piece of that is that I don't know if I want to do the work, and they don't know if I'm the right guy to do the work.
I love that. I like that you give them a chance to understand who you are and your philosophy. And inside of that room, you're being vulnerable, number one, giving time, and number two, giving a bit of education and a time for reflection on who or what they should be looking for. We're going to pick this up after these messages. You're listening to the show Made of More. I'm your host, Chris Erdmann, and you're listening here with Justin Park, our guest for today, the preferred lawyer to be going to. Tune back. Stay tuned.
Most people out here think that taking care of one another is important. And most people would step up for a neighbor going through a tough time. Most people around here help out friends and family when they need it. But the funny thing is, most of us won't look for help when we need it. If you're struggling with mental health, you should know that there are resources out there that can help. And it's okay to talk about it if you need to. One place to get started with information is loveyourmindtoday.org. Loveyourmindtoday.org offers a range of guides, instructions, and insights for dealing with difficult situations or getting through a tough time. If you're struggling with mental health, get the help you need, because most people out here really care. Visit loveyourmindtoday.org. That's loveyourmindtoday.org. Brought to you by the Huntsman Mental Health Institute and the Ad Council.
Hello, I'm Chris Erdmann. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW, I sit down with inspiring entrepreneurs, creative minds, and game changers to uncover the real stories behind their business. On my show, Made of More, we explore the challenges that they've overcome, the breakthroughs that they've celebrated, and the mindset that drives them forward. If you're ready to unlock your full entrepreneurial potential, Made of More is the show for you, because here we know you are made of more. Every Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW.
Bringing good vibes to the Puget Sound and the world. Alternative Talk 1150.
Welcome back to the show, Made of More. I'm your host, Chris Erdmann, and I'm sitting here with Justin Park of Romero Park Law Firm here. And Justin is actually just telling us the two things that you should be considering when you're talking or thinking about hiring an attorney. And number one, I believe was, do they get back to you?
Well, that's one of the things. I think the two were, do they have the expertise you need, right? Mm-hmm. Do they have the information you need? And two, do you have the right relationship, right? Does the relationship work for you?
That's right. Does the relationship and getting vulnerable in there and giving them a bit of time. How much time do you usually give them on the first meeting?
You know what? The interesting part is I don't ever really put a clock on that, but my experience is that most people need somewhere in the realm of 15 to 30 minutes to give me an initial kind of summary of what's going on and let us talk about, how we would get to the point where we can make a plan. Because there's, no one's going to step in, hey, I got this problem, can you fix it? And I have the answer, It's usually, okay, in order for me to get to where I can get you an answer, here's what I would do. Do you want to move forward with that? Yeah, kind of the process behind it and everything. Yeah, I'd probably be leery if I came to you with something complex and you knew the answer right away. I'd want you to do a bit of research, maybe sleep on it a few nights, and get back to me. So you're a husband and a father of 4, and your wife Jana, correct? Yeah, that's right. Yeah, your wife Jana. How has being a husband and father shaped you and how you show up today as a lawyer and a leader? It's why I do everything that I do, right? I mean, that's the most significant and important thing to me in my life. But even that, you got to think a little deeper, right? Okay, yeah, sure. But what does that really mean? Well, I guess what that means is that I have to think about the priorities I have in terms of them, right? So the good news is, I have 4 kids. They're all healthy and happy. I only have 1 left at home, and the other 3 are all out in the world and doing their own thing. And as I like to say, they're all adults because they all have their own health insurance. Yeah. So I've been fortunate in that respect. Certainly their relationships with kids are always unique and different, and sometimes you're in great spots and sometimes you're not in great spots. But when that's the priority, then I think about everything a little bit differently, right? So that doesn't mean that I look at my job as something where, gosh, I've got to get away from it because I got to go spend more time with them. No, I need to do really great at my job so that by doing that, I have the resources I need to take care of them, right? And I have the ability to be in a position where maybe I have a little more flexibility in my time. But you only get that by getting to a point of success, right? Right. The less success you have, the less freedom you have to make those kind of decisions. And so, I think that's it, right? When you're focused on family, it doesn't mean that you're not focused on something else. It means that those other things are done with an eye towards
towards
your
a greater
family.
goal, towards
Yeah.
your family. And I like this because you do want to be successful, you do want to make good money, you do want to win cases, but that is not the pinnacle. And you have a couple pinnacles, it sounds like, because you have your family over here, you have your children, then your wife, and then you have your relationship with God. And it sounds like, if you're trying to do well or the best you can in this, but you're doing it for this, so you have a sense of being grounded. You have a different North Star where if you're shooting for all this, the best you can be is because you want to be a really great example and leader over here, which is really different than just being the best over here, because you're going to have certain level morals and ethics that you want this side to really be proud of you.
Yeah.
And that the curtain's open and you're being watched, or they're acknowledging. And for me, I think those are the type of leaders that I like to surround myself around, because it's a very different outcome. It feels very different. I've worked with groups where it is just about the money, and it is just, in my experience with that, they're willing to cut legs, they're willing to chop kneecaps, whatever it is for their goal. But on this side over here, it comes with a bit of grace, and it really comes with a different type of maybe true leadership, I would say, for me. And instead of chopping the kneecaps and whatnot, you're probably going to teach them along the way. And so that's kind of what I gather from watching.
Yeah, I think that hits it right on the head, right? Is that having, what you're guided by kind of determines, it may not always determine what you do, because a lot of those things can be very similar, right? I mean, people who are focused solely on the accolades and the money and things like that, they may be willing to chop a kneecap, right? I will tell you, when you're being focused on a family, you also might be willing to do that for a different reason, right? You can kind of get the mama bear thing going on, right? But at the same time, I think it does lead more down the road you were just discussing, where I have to be able to look in the mirror and go, do my kids look at me and see a good person, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that, like most people, there's days when I'm doing pretty good, and there's days when I'm not doing so good.
Yeah.
But it certainly makes you stop and think, right?
Yeah, it does. It does. And one side seems more fulfilling. One side seems a bit more empty.
I would agree with that. Well, if your focus is on accolades and money, it will always be that. And there will always be, you'll never get there, right? You can never get enough, right? You might be successful. You might have all the success in the world, but you're never going to get to a point where you're like, oh gosh, I reached what I wanted to reach, because if you do, the accolades and money stop.
Well, success and the accolades, there's maybe only one part of success as well.
Yeah.
Where the leaders that I look up to, it seems like there's this big circle that they're checking the boxes off, that what makes success. And if the spiritual and the family thing is empty, it may not have been worth it. It may not actually be success. It's like, I've heard some people call it empty success. At this point in the conversation, it makes me reflect on the beginning of our conversation when you were a young man and you just left the house. And at this part of the conversation, that you have accountability in a different way than you did when you went to Japan, where I could tell you were proud that you went off on your own. And over here, that when you were in Japan, the accountability was kind of at the top, where you had your mentors and support group and people, and you were maybe looking up to them in a way. And then now in this part of the conversation, you're kind of talking about it again, but now it seems like you're viewing yourself as the leader and mentor, and then you have the people over here, and it's like very reflective on the beginning of our conversation to me. And at this point, which brings me to the next question, is, the name of the show is Made of More, and that's why you're on it, because, when I talk to you, that you're a person that in many aspects, even through this short conversation, that you've shown that you've thought about more and you're made of more in different parts of your life. But what does that term mean to you?
That's a really, really deep question, Chris. And so to give a short answer to it is hard, but at the same time, I can't live my life feeling like there's no meaning to it. Mm-hmm. And I guess what I mean by that is that, I have faith in something bigger than myself. Because if there isn't something bigger than myself, then, it can on a day-to-day basis get to feel minor. It can feel lacking. Like it's ordinary or lacking or something like that. And look, all I am is I'm just a wild animal trying to, gather enough nuts and berries to get through the winter. Right. And while that's a form of life, doesn't seem to be in harmony with what I feel like human beings are, right? We feel there's more. We feel things, right? We have families, we have goals, we have desires, we have all these things, and all of that is put together in a package that is something more than just an animal. And understanding that, or having that feeling and that faith, for me is really important. Mm-hmm. So that I can feel like I'm not just going through the motions on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I can hear that. And I think a lot of listeners can relate that, no matter what you believe in, a lot of people are out there thinking that there's more and that they don't have to have that emptiness, whatever that emptiness is. And to them, and there's something more than just the money. There's more than just the accolade. There's more than just that action. But I think a lot of people can sense, whatever you believe in, that there's a bigger reason to be doing things. And I just want to say, it's good to dive in deeper and not ignore that and reflect on that, whatever that means to you.
Absolutely.
And from listening to you, we haven't actually gone into much deeper conversations, but listening to you, I feel like that is definitely there. We have 2 minutes, so I feel like I talked to you for days, and we could just keep going, and we'll have to pick this up again. But what I want to know is, how do people find you?
So the law firm's name is Romero Park, ROMEROPARK, and you can find us on the web at www.romeropark.com. You can call me. Our phone number is 425-450-5000. Pretty easy to remember. My email address is jpark, for Justin Park, at romeropark.com. So you can reach out any of those ways. You can find me, and I would love to talk to people.
And then, as a reminder, as we're capping it off, tell them again what law that you'd like to specialize in.
Yeah, I deal with business, real estate, construction matters. Now, when I say business, that's pretty broad, right? If you're a person who owns something or wants to own something or has a business or doesn't have a business but has real estate or has situations that you're dealing with in that vein, give me a call. Now, if you say to yourself, man, I have a situation going on where I might need a lawyer, and you don't know what kind of lawyer you need, call me anyway. I'll help you get to the right person.
Yeah, and I could vouch for that. You've definitely sent some of my clients the right way, so I really, really appreciate you. Justin, I just want to say a special thank you for taking your time out of the day. I know you're a wanted, busy man, and I just want to say what a gift it was to have you here today. I've learned a lot about you, and I feel closer to supporting you and your cause because I just know you a little bit deeper as a person as of today.
Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate the time.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Made of More on KKNW. Whether you're on the road, at the office, or listening from home, keep chasing what lights you up, keep building what matters, and never settle for less than the life you were made for. You are made of more. More purpose, more impact, more joy. Made of More is part of the Speaking Current network of shows and podcasts, all of which that are dedicated to inspiring listeners to build lives of meaning, connection, and value. You can find the Speaking Current network of shows, including Made of More, wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us on YouTube. Until next Wednesday at 8 a.m. on KKNW, I'm Chris Erdmann. Stay bold, stay inspired, and stay made of more.